at Econometrics. I saw you basically cheering. This is a huge relief, isn't it?
It is a relief. It's also, you know, as an economist, one's asked to predict these things, and of course,
you got it right.
I got it right.
There seemed to be a change. A few weeks ago, maybe over a month ago, a Reuters poll, most people were predicting a downgrade, and then this positivity seemed to creep in. Why was there that change?
There are a multitude of small factors, I think, that combined to change the sentiment towards this. First of all, I mean, Pravin Gordhan has really been a star in trying to go out of his way to exude this confidence that South Africa is still on the path of fiscal consolidation. You then got the Constitutional Court finding against President Zuma, and then the further finding that to reverse the exoneration of him on charges of corruption, which were seen to reinforce South Africa's judicial independence and the integrity of its institutions. You got the reappointment or the extension of the contract of the Director General of National Treasury, Lungisa Fuzile. He has been at the forefront of fiscal rectitude and attempts to fight against state capture, and that was also seen as a very positive. And then over and above that, there have been tentative signs suggesting that things are not getting any worse in the economy, that growth is not deteriorating. It's very weak, there's hardly any, but it's not getting still worse. And people are starting to think that maybe growth is going to pick up a little over the coming year. The drought is over as well.
A rating is a gauge of our creditworthiness. So technically how much debt we've got, whether we can pay it back, whether enough tax revenue will come in. You're talking about a lot of other things though. Institutions and the rating agencies have spoken about policy uncertainty. The ANC confirmed that they asked the party about their internal processes. So it is a much bigger picture than just the debt and our likelihood.
You're absolutely correct. It is a bigger picture, but the essence of it, you're so right, is how do these institutions bear upon South Africa maintaining its fiscal discipline? And if you believed that the institutions were collapsing, you'd say, well, we're headed for a populist government that spends like crazy and eventually we go bankrupt. We are now in the opposite. They feel convinced that we are not going that way. We've still got to prove it, and that's going to be the key over the next 6 months. But we have to.
Basically, S&P seems to be adopting a wait and see approach. So will they wait for the elections? These next 6 months are crucial, basically.
The next 6 months are crucial. One also thinks that they probably didn't want to go ahead of the and downgrade us ahead of the elections. They know that a lot of what is being said in the media and so on is a lot of rhetoric ahead of elections. But we're going to have to prove that we are sticking to our knitting, that we are cutting back on government spending and our deficits and public debt, that we are restructuring our state-owned enterprises so that they don't serve as an additional liability on the government, and finally, that we are determined to improve our growth rate so that we can lift tax revenues and meet our expenditure commitments more easily.
What exactly have we avoided? What would have been the immediate felt repercussions of junk status?
You know, one cannot be sure what we've avoided, because many would argue that a lot of the weakness in the rand in the past 6 months has been precisely that people have been expecting this downgrading, and now it hasn't come. Theoretically, what we've avoided is a decision on the part of some pension funds and other investors to sell out of South African government bonds, because the signal given by the Standard & Poor's has suggested that there's a greater chance that they might lose their money if they invest in our bonds than previously. Some pension funds are obliged by their own rules not to be are not allowed to be invested in bonds of a sub-investment grade status, and so some of those could have been sold off if we had been downgraded, which would have put downward pressure on the rand, upward pressure on inflation, caused interest rates to have to rise quite a bit further than previously anticipated, which would be negative for economic growth. We've avoided that, and so the man in the street is absolved of the additional pain that might have arisen.
Because it also leads to less money for housing, things like that. We're already spending a lot on those interest charges. So would those necessarily go up as well?
That is correct. Government would have been faced already. It's in a situation where the interest bill for the next 3 years is going to grow faster than any other form of government spending at 11.4% per annum. And if we'd got a downgrade, that may have risen still further. And when you bear in mind that expenditure on housing and education and so on is growing at 6-7% per annum, you can see that that would have squeezed out its ability to spend on such vital areas of spending if it had to pay for more interest on its debt.
But because we've still faced this in December, a lot of people have been asking the question, how important are these rating agencies? Investors do look at it, but I understand when America was downgraded, the reverse happened. You know, interest rates went down, people came into the economy. Of course, America is different to us, but what I'm asking in this day and age, at this juncture, when investors, as far as I'm concerned, know a lot about South Africa, how much do the rating agencies count?
Unfortunately, the reality is that ratings agencies seem to be counting more today than ever before. Back in the 90s, we were sub-investment grade, and we never worried about the ratings. Today, they are seen as a litmus test of a country's solvency and image for investment purposes.
Okay, so it is important, and like you mentioned, we have actually been in junk before when Mandela came in. So what were the implications of that, and how quickly did we get out of it?
Fortunately, in those days, you know, the new South Africa meant that quite a lot of people were happy to consider investing in the new South Africa, and we were not as dependent upon foreign investment flows as we are right now. The other thing is we were not importing so much more than exporting as we are doing right now. So we've got a very big shortage of foreign exchange at the moment. We are not managing to export enough, and therefore the ratings are important to enable foreign investors to give us that foreign exchange by buying our government bonds.
Finally, Azar, so this is great. We've avoided a downgrade for now. We have time to show these rating agencies that a lot of what they're concerned about can be fixed. Fitch is still to pronounce, but presumably that won't go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, firstly, Fitch is not doesn't have quite a profile that Standard & Poor's has.
It's the smaller one.
It's the smaller one, and it's very doubtful, especially since their outlook was stable, unlike Standard & Poor's, which was negative. It's doubtful that they would go for a downgrade of our credit rating. It's possible. I would say the worst case scenario is that they also put us on a negative outlook, but that would still mean that next week we'll still retain our investment grade status with them.
All right, so a huge relief for now. Thank you so much, Azar Jammine, with us in studio. And a recap of that top story: we've dodged the downgrade. Standard & Poor's announcing that it will retain our investment grade status for now. Of course, there is another review in December, and we're expecting that Fitch decision next week sometime probably. But as we've been discussing, unlikely to be a downgrade there. We take a short